Bible, feel free to take one. We've got extras, so feel free, if you don't have a Bible in your home or you've never had a Bible in your home before, feel free to take a Bible home with you. It says on the front, larger print. I cannot testify that it's actually that much larger. Maybe it feels a little bit larger than what they normally print, but it's still pretty small. But that being said, if you can read it and you'd like to take a Bible with you, feel free to take one with you. They are a gift to you and to your household. Well, today, over the next couple of weeks, we are starting a series on the book of Ruth that we'll be going through together over the next month. Ruth, you can find in these Bibles that you have in front of you on page 263. So if you're looking to follow along, page 263 is where we'll be today as we begin our study of the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth is one that is filled with the theme of love. The theme of love. Ruth has been described by some commentators as the great love story of the Old Testament. It's got drama in it. It's got suspense. It's got depth of character. It's got detailed descriptions of people and places and emotions. Ruth is a beautiful love story. And as we study it over the next several weeks, we'll be asking questions about love. What is love? How does love take shape in the book of Ruth? And then what are we to take away from the book of Ruth as we study it? Well, as we get into Ruth this morning, I want us to contemplate three questions about love. First off, how is love a commitment? Secondly, how is love a display of affection? And thirdly, what does our love reveal about our desires? What does our love reveal about our desires? Let's dive right into Ruth chapter 1, and we'll examine these questions today. Ruth chapter 1, starting in verse 1. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, his wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Epaphrathites from Bethlehem in Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. After they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and without her husband. When Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her 2 daughters-in-law, Naomi left the place where she had been living, and she set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you have come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." At this they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "Look," said Naomi, "your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her." But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me. When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. So the two women went back until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the women exclaimed, "Can't this be Naomi?" "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. Well, we've got three questions as we examine and introduce ourselves to the book of Ruth this morning. These are questions about commitment, about affection, and about desire. We see commitment, affection, and desire all wrapped up in this first chapter of Ruth. But as we said, Ruth is a love story. It's the Old Testament's love story, but it starts out with the love not between maybe a young maiden and a young man, but with the love of a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law. A deep and profound commitment between two people to stay together, no matter what life throws their way. The commitment that Ruth displays to Naomi, I think, is a commitment that we could all want out of a good friend, out of a family member, or out of a spouse even. Someone who is willing to say, "Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Where you are buried, I will be buried." Ruth displays a tremendous commitment for Naomi. When we think about love, commitment doesn't often come to mind. When I was looking up different word studies on the word love, it was fascinating how often in English, when we use the word love, we're actually talking about a deep affection or a deep desire for someone. And we'll talk about affection and desire. But the first and fundamental primary thing that we need to take away from our study of Ruth is that love means commitment. Love means commitment. Now, that commitment can look different for different people. As we love one another, that love and that commitment can look different. I love my wife Amy, and I'm deeply committed to her. I love you all, and I love coming here and being in fellowship with you. But my level of commitment is a little bit different to Lake St. Charles than it is to Amy. I'm with Amy for the rest of my life. With you, I'm with you a couple times a week. So there's commitment, but commitment differs in the way how we love one another. But nonetheless, there is commitment. If you go and you look up in your dictionary at home, what is love, it'll talk about affection. It'll talk about maybe even a romantic relationship. But it neglects this word, commitment. Commitment. My little 5-year-old is at the point where she's seeing programs on television and we're watching cartoons together and watching movies together. And whenever there's a boy and a girl in the room, she gets all squeamish and excited and nervous, and she says, "Are they going to get married? I think they love each other." She recognizes an attraction, an affection, a desire. But I have to guard my daughter, and I have to remind her, they haven't gotten married yet. They haven't made a commitment. Commitment. Ruth makes this promise to Naomi, and I have it here hopefully on display for us. if our technology is working. Again, reading verses 16 through 18. Ruth makes this commitment. Don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if even death separates you and me. Maybe there are lots of things we could say about this sort of language. Maybe crazy, selfless. It's a commitment. This is deep commitment language. There's no indication in this promise from Ruth, in this declaration, that Ruth is ever going to leave Naomi's side, but rather just the contrary. That Ruth is serious about her love for her mother-in-law. So serious that she's willing to let it impact her lifestyle choices, where she lives, what she believes, what she cares about. This is a deep-set love that has the foundation of commitment. Secondly, we asked about affection. How does love and affection relate to one another? How are we affected by affection? Well, as we're looking at Ruth chapter 1, we see that there's definitely affection. There's definitely attraction. Not attraction in a romantic sense. This isn't a sinful relationship between Naomi and Ruth. This is a deep set of affection, a mentor-mentee relationship, a mother and a daughter, caring for one another, wanting to learn from one another, wanting to grow. Have you ever heard the phrase, I love you, and I will always love you, but I don't like you very much right now? Maybe you've heard that. You've probably never said that, right? You've never said that to a spouse or a family member, maybe a coworker. I love you, but I don't like you. We're talking about affection and attraction in that moment. What makes us want to spend time together? What makes us want to be close and near and dear to one another? What makes us want to get to know one another is an attraction. Two things that want to be close. Again, I'm not talking about a romantic or a sexual attraction or affection here. I'm talking about a desire to be close, a desire to get to know one another, a desire to be in proximity together. And Ruth has this for her mother-in-law. She has a deep sense of affection, a deep sense that she wants to be near to her mother-in-law. Lastly, we asked a question about desire. What does love reveal about our desires? Well, it can certainly be seen that Ruth's plain desire is to be near Naomi. She doesn't ever want to be separated. She wants to be close to her mother-in-law. That her desires are for everything that she wants in life to line up with, run parallel alongside Naomi in her life. Ruth's priorities fall into some sort of hierarchy that looks like this. Ruth and Naomi, priority 1. Priority 2, everything else. Ruth's desires, because of her commitment and because of her affection for her mother-in-law, line up and change her priorities in life. Naomi is from one place, from the town of Bethlehem in Judah. Ruth is from a very different place, Moab. And yet, despite their differences, they grew up in different places, they spoke different languages. If we were to make it contemporary, we could say one of them grew up in Canada speaking French, and one of them grew up in the United States speaking English. They probably spoke different languages when they first met one another. And yet they cared for one another so much, and Ruth developed such an affection and made such a commitment that it revealed that her desires were to always be with Naomi. At this point, you're saying, okay, Chaplain Jacob, this is great. Fantastic. Love hearing about Ruth and Naomi. What does this mean for us? And where does God come in? Where does God enter into the picture in Ruth chapter 1? Well, I want to turn these questions back onto us for the year 2017. And I want to make a comparison. I want to ask you this question. Think on these questions today. Do you love the Lord Jesus Christ? I want you to think about this today. And let this be your guiding question for 2017. Do you love the Lord Jesus Christ? Now, we've talked a lot about commitment and affection and desires and priorities. Do you love Jesus? What do we mean when we say that? Well, first off, are you committed to Jesus? Ruth makes this promise that we've gone over. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people. Boy, church history is riddled with people who come together worshiping Christ and then breaking apart over differences, over disagreements. Church history is filled with wars, with Christians killing one another because of disagreements. Rather than saying, where you go, I will go, and your people will be my people. Sometimes we put little caveats in our commitments, don't we? Your people will be my people unless they disagree with me about this one topic. Your people will be my people unless they look different. Your people, O Lord Almighty God, will be my people unless their worship is a little bit different than what I'm used to. God, your people will be my people unless I really just can't get along with this other person. I don't enjoy their company. I don't like them. Makes me nervous. We get into conflict. So we set up little caveats in our commitments to Jesus Christ, don't we? Jesus, I love you and I'll be committed to you unless you make me go and do that one thing that I'm not good at. Jesus, I'll be committed to you unless you expect me to spend time with that particular person. Jesus, I love you and I'm committed to you, but I'm not sure if I'm willing to talk to other people about you. I kind of want to keep our relationship a secret. Ruth exclaims and makes a promise of commitment to Naomi that breaks down every potential caveat. It's as though Ruth says, no matter what happens, Naomi, you're my top priority. I confess in my own life, I'm sure this is true for you as well, when we sin, just a three-letter word, it's a very little word, but it's got a lot of meaning behind it. When we sin, fundamentally what we are doing is we are breaking our commitment to God. We are distancing ourselves from God. We're willing to say, God, I'm committed to you, I love you, except in this way. This is one way I'm not willing to be committed to you. So this first question, are you committed to Jesus Christ? Because He's committed to you. No matter what you go through, no matter what life throws your way, no matter when your husband or your wife died, no matter how your children think of you or your grandchildren come and visit you or their frequency of coming and seeing you, no matter what happens financially, what happens to our government, to our country, no matter what happens to your friends, no matter what happens this week, Jesus is committed to you, no matter what. You may have a period of time, a moment in your life where you say, Jesus, I'm not so sure about this. Jesus loves you and is still committed, no matter what. Where you go, He goes. And he came and he lived and he died to make you one of his people. He's committed to you. Are you committed to him? Secondly, second question for our application today is affection. Ruth displays a great affection for Naomi. How are we affectionate towards Christ? Let this be one of our three guiding questions for 2013. The first guiding question, how are we committed to Jesus Christ? The second, how are we affectionate towards Jesus Christ? I'd like to make two suggestions for you today. Two suggestions. The first comes by way of an example. I was talking with two single people over the last couple of weeks, and as I was talking with each of them, they're both involved in this relationship together, but they're not quite sure where their relationship is at yet. They're trying to define their relationship together, and it's quite funny to watch, and it's quite curious to watch. But it's also very serious for these two people as they're trying to understand where each other will fit into their life moving forward. And the way how one of them put it was, I'm not sure if he loves me. And the way how the young man put it, I'm not sure if she loves me. The young man said, she doesn't always want to spend time with me. The way how the young woman put it, he doesn't even know what to buy me yet for Christmas. So I want to ask you, how do you display affection for Christ? How are you affectionate for him? Oftentimes we give gifts to show affection, and oftentimes we spend time together to show affection. Today, by getting up, by coming to worship, you are showing Christ that he's a priority, that you're affectionate towards him, because you make time for him to worship, to gather, to hear from his word, to pray, because we love him. So I want to say, in your time and in your gifts. Now you might say, okay, Jacob, is this an appeal to drop more money as we leave? No. I want to talk about gifts in a different way. You have gifts, not just money, not just things you can give. Yes, that too. But not just that. You've got talents. You've got abilities. You've got stories. You've got experience that you can offer as gifts to Jesus. As gifts. Sometimes when you're walking down the hallway, you might be in a great mood. That's a gift that you can give to somebody else. You say a word of encouragement. You can say something affectionate towards someone else. Good morning. How's your day? You can share a gift that God has given you that day. Maybe you're feeling great. Maybe you've got some extra energy. Maybe for us men, that means we're holding open the door for ladies. Maybe you ladies, maybe that means sitting down and having a conversation with somebody during coffee. You have gifts. Use them. How are you using them to show your affection for Christ? Lastly, Ruth reveals a desire. She is deeply desirous to be with Naomi. That promise that she makes, that big commitment that displays her affection, also rearranges her entire outlook on life and her desires. Our first question was, how are we committed to Christ? Our second question was, how do we display our affection? And our third question is, how do we prioritize our desires? How do we prioritize our desires for Christ? I really want to let this sink in as we go into 2017. How does your priority list on a day in, day out basis reflect that you love Jesus? This is a tough one, and I want us to think about this. I don't want us just to respond this morning. I want us to think about this as we go through the book of Ruth together. As we study what is love, what is commitment, what is affection, what is desire, and how do our priorities line up with the one who loves us, Jesus Christ? How do our priorities line up with his? How do our desires line up with his? Because he desires greatly to spend time with us. He desires greatly to give us gifts. He has amazing, affection for us. So much so that he came, took on flesh, and went through struggles. Jesus lost friends to death, to disease. Jesus had conflict with his family. Jesus had conflict with his friends. Jesus subjected himself to poverty. Why? Why did he do all this? Because he was madly in love with you. Madly in love with you. So in love with you that when he knew you were dead in your trespasses and sins, he wouldn't let that stand. And he came, took on flesh, so that way you could spend eternity together. I'm not sure there's any love story in history that can top that. How much Jesus loves you, how committed he is to you, how affectionate he is towards you, and how his desires shape his priorities around you, around us, around God's people. So let's ask these questions in 2017. Let's ask great questions about love. Let's ask great questions about commitment, affection, and desire. Let's go to God's Word and let's pray. Let's pray that God would grow in us in 2017 a commitment for Christ, an affection for Christ, and a desire for Christ. Let's close in prayer.